Hey guys, last night I finished up that C4 trans. I ended up rebuilding the original one that was in the car and used the $80 larger trans as a guide and a couple of parts that I stole off of it. So just gonna do a little catch up of where we were. I was too tired last night to make a video, so I figure I'll make one this morning before I put the thing in and talk about it. So that's her all back together. I bought a gasket set. Local place had it. They had 2 hours later. They had it delivered. Came with the clutches and pretty much the gaskets and O-rings and seals. No bands. I didn't need the bands. They look pretty good. Down there's just the pieces that kind of came out of it. And if you look at them, kind of see that there's clutch plates that have material on both sides of them, and then there's a steel plate that they rub on, and the clutches have teeth on the inside like you see here, and the plates that are back in the transmission have teeth that go to the outside out here. The plates actually look something like this, but these are actually the clutches that they're so burned off there's not even any material left on a couple of them. It's supposed to look a little bit more like that. That's what came out of there, and it was actually kind of a good lesson as far as how these things work. Yeah, I've taken so many of these things out and just pretty much dropped them off somewhere else and had somebody rebuild them and put them back together, because they're always like that, you know, taboo thing of you gotta really know what you're doing as far as putting these together, and there's a lot to them. To be honest, it really wasn't that bad. If you're able to rebuild a carb, it's kind of the exact same idea, just taking your time and watching how pieces go together. I would say it was probably a little easier for me because I had something to. I took apart the other trans first just to see how things came apart. The back half of the trans, the tail housing, tail shaft, there's really nothing to it. You just unbolt it and it slides right off the end. And basically the only thing that's kind of really in there is the park paw. That's the one of the bands. The other one's still in the transmission, and they have these clutch packs. The clutch packs have. Let me turn the light on. The clutch packs have what I just showed you over there, and there's two sets of them, and they do have play. It's not like they're pressed in there, but what is pressed in after you take the snap ring off, there's 6 and 6 I think of each, the plates and the clutches. At the very bottom you see that thing that looks like a spring on there. That's like a little hydraulic cylinder that moves in and out, very short stroke, but that's what locks these clutches up through a hydraulic pressure that comes through. There's a little hole right inside there. So hydraulic fluid comes out of a shaft, fires that cylinder and locks these clutches up. So there's one set of clutches in there and another set of clutches in here. On the bottom of this one, which is probably the main one, that one's probably reversed because it's not that heavy duty of a cylinder. I don't know if you can see it. Pull it apart. Is underneath you have these clutches again. You can kind of see that it moves from that snap ring, so you can actually just take the snap ring right off and everything will come out. But right here, this retaining ring and this clip that come out of there, you can be able to see it. Inside here is a big heavy spring. When it's not compressed, it probably sits flush with the top of that, so that's how far it's compressed, probably 1.5 inches, maybe an inch. That sucker's compressed in there. That was the hardest thing I really just had to deal with, was getting that apart. And the reason why I wanted to get that apart, this is the one that was burned up on mine, and my feeling was if that very short hydraulic cylinder on the bottom got compromised in some way, say the seal that was on it failed, that would make for the cause that I had, that the discs had burned up. More than likely that wasn't the case, because as I said, the thing was running low on fluid, so I probably didn't have enough pressure to fire it at some point and caused them to slip, and it already started the damage. And if you look, this is the very front of the pump. You can see there's a hole there and a hole there. That hole, again, goes into, you see that hole there, and when it gets a signal from the valve body, signal being the hydraulic fluid coming through, it fires that cylinder in there and locks all these clutches up. To get that thing apart, I just had to get a little creative and come up by the arbor press, and that thing was sitting stacked here, and I had to have an opening to get the snap ring out. So this is just a piece of exhaust pipe, and cut some windows out of it, and then actually had to kind of flare it out a little bit just to get room for the snap ring to grow, to clear it. Getting it back on, of course, was the hardest part. That probably took about 20 minutes of screwing around with it. And snap ring, we had to make a tool for that. I'm just gonna pick it up, focus with you. You'll see that this had the two little tits that stick out of the end for the regular snap rings, and I ended up putting a notch, ground a notch in there to catch the end of it. So I now have official tools for pulling one of those apart. So after all that was said and done, here's what the seals look like. Those on the inside of them, it's just like it kind of looks like a ring, like on a piston, but just made out of rubber, and it kind of does the same idea. So replace those, replaced a bunch of seals. This is the seal up by the torque converter. It also came with the seal for the tail shaft, but if you look at this one, it still has the rubber boot on it. I would lose the rubber boot. It didn't come with one. The seal is inside there. My thought is this: if it does leak at the drive shaft, it didn't leak before, but if it does leak, it's very simple to take this thing off. Actually, you can probably just do it right on the car. Just pull the drive shaft off, pull this boot out, and change that out. So I didn't want to lose that if I didn't need to. I did have a book. Not that I used it very much. I just gave it a kind of quick glance, and you can tell the age of this thing by the yellow pages. A lot of these books, I probably have like half a dozen of these, and it's kind of funny because most of them said stuff, had information on everything but automatic transmissions. I guess they figured that no one's really going to kind of get into it, but this one actually did. It tells you how to make a tester for your a homemade tester for the torque converter. I think I'm just going to rinse the torque converter out the best I can, because it does have a drain hole, and go back and just reinstall it. If I have any problems, there's a whole bunch of test procedures afterwards of how to look into reading your pressures coming out, reading your vacuum, going to the kick down, that kind of stuff. What the valve body holes are. There's an air test, and I did that air test too. Basically, it's just the ports coming from the valve body that fire different things inside. One fires the the reverse band, one fires the forward band, and then one fires one set of clutches, and one hole fires another set of clutches. And again, all that's done with hydraulically, but air will bench test them too. And pretty much what we got on that thing. So on the transmissions, one of them had excuse me, the servos that fire that forward band. One had an A on it, and another one had an H on it. And the H, as I said, I knew people said, here you can actually see this one. This one actually looks like it's apart. There's more of those O-rings. Again, just another hydraulic cylinder that these seals make from the outer, kind of just like a piston is, and they have a little port that fires oil in behind it and forces it forward, which in turn on the inside of the transmission has a little bar that meets this band and when the air cylinder, then when the hydraulic cylinder fires, it just tightens the band up and locks up the drum. That's how they operate. Getting back to what I was talking about, the difference why I guess an H servo is better than the A servo is the cylinder on this one, the diameter across here is probably 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch larger across than the other one was, which just gives you that much more power to lock that band up. This car is just a stock, it's just a 302 two-barrel, nothing fancy, not putting out much power, and it's kind of a cruiser. It's not a car that you want to be driving and having the thing jerk every time it shifts, and just not a very comfortable ride. My other Mustang, that's a different story. I would probably want that in there, but for this car, as I said, it's just a, she's just a cruiser. It's nothing that really warrants having that in there, and to be honest, I kind of want to save it for the other car. And again, it's no big deal if I find that I do want to change that. That's something that can be changed right on the car. It doesn't need any kind of removal to get it out. Basically just pop the 4 bolts out, work the thing backwards, and you could just change that servo right on the car. So gonna go do breakfast and come back, put a trans in, and hopefully if I have enough time, I got a bunch of errands to do today, I will have the car up and running, and if it works well, you'll see the video. If you don't see a video, it means it failed. Nah, I'll make a video either way, I don't care. But thanks for watching. If you like what you see, please subscribe, and take care.